So one day I was sitting watching YouTube, doing whatever, I get this YouTube video on my recommended. Sometimes you get a video that pops up in your suggestions or in your homepage recommendations where it's just like a video with a very small amount of views, maybe 10 or 12, sometimes 100, sometimes 1,000. Those are very different numbers, but they're still pretty small in terms of YouTube. Having 1,000 people watch a channel is a pretty substantial amount of people, but it's just not what I'm here to talk about. In roughly, I want to say mid-2022, I think it was, I had a video that popped up in my recommendations. I clicked on it and I thought it was weird. It had this clown vomity thumbnail. When I clicked on it, I was led down this weird rabbit hole to this unremarkable podcast. And while most of the video title was weird and undecipherable, the date in the title wasn't, which might not seem important, but it will be. The channel in question had hundreds, possibly thousands of uploads, all formatted with the same titles and thumbnails. This channel is just weird to me. So back then, I guess, even though I did it, I don't remember doing it or why I did it exactly, but on a whim, I suppose, I quote searched the date in the video and then I sorted by, I think, rating. That's the one that gets you the videos with the least amount of views, and I got this result. This is the result I got after searching the date that was appearing across all these videos. It was April 1st, 2022, and it pulled up about 70 videos. This search helped me find like 20 of these channels, but there's probably way more. Now, if you focus on the title itself, you'll see that it says 2022-04-01, and it's interesting about this is because this was around April. So if this was, I don't know if there was any other combinations of dates that I could have searched to pull up more videos, but there are about 70 here, and the sites are embedded into the titles, but there's a weird formatting with them. Some of them are just direct copies of the website's URLs, and then others, it's weird. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. First one I have just goes to Buzzsprout. I couldn't find the exact URL, but it just led me to buzzsprout.com. The second one led me to a podcast called At Any Rate on podbean.com. The third one was a SoundCloud about Europe, I guess. Promote Europe races ahead in sustainability movement. I'm not sure how SoundCloud formats its stuff, if this is just a catch-all website where the most recent things are uploaded, or if this is the particular. Let's just move on. I don't even care. Let's see. The next one is just a basic website. It just took me to Houston Public Media, and it's also got podcasts on the website. Next is Audio Boom. It took me to 138 Wings Later, a 2-hour podcast released on April 10th, 2022. Released on April 10th, 2022. The next one is another Podbean one. It's called Indie Film Cafe Network. Next is CBC Listen with Bob Murphy. Next is Static I don't know how you say this. StaticAdorylabs.com, and I couldn't find anything for the link itself, but I did find an archive.org page that lists out all the different, it just maps out all the different URLs, and wouldn't you know it, podcast. The next page is, Audio Boom. After that, the next one is StarQuest Media. After that, it is another SoundCloud, the best supporting podcast, episode 128, BSA's on the verge of a nervous breakdown. After that is Podbean, Random Ramblings with Bob, or Rob, not Bob. Next up is Coaching Soccer Weekly. Next up after that is a SoundCloud, Transforming Dentistry with AI. After that, Podbean. It's Moolah Money Made Simple with Bruce Celery. They turned him into a vegetable. Next up, Pacemaker Basics. Now, I don't think this is correct, but I think most of the other ones are correct, so, you know, a little bit of inconsistency is fun every now and then, so I'm just going to include it. I couldn't find anything with podcast on this website, though, which is why I'm thinking it's incorrect. There's nothing even remotely resembling that on that website. Next website is Stormfront Freaks on Podbean. After that, there's Blueberry.com, which is a podcast hosting website. It's similar to Buzzsprout from earlier. After that, there's Timothy Leary on archive.org. I couldn't find this using the link, but it is archived, so I'm guessing it's been taken down by now. I don't know. And that's it. Those are all the ones I could find. That thing I brought up earlier about the weird title formatting is interesting to me, because the weird part about it is some titles would be, for instance, let me see if I can find one real quick. I'm not really seeing any. There's some of them where you just have to add the syntax into it, like there's Indie Film Cafe, and all I had to do was add https://indiefilmcafe.podbean.com. That's all I had to do. And then that just took me straight to the website, right? Just add the syntax and it works. But with the SoundCloud ones, the link I pulled off of them was SoundCloud 2010 tracks 127-128-2185. That number at the end, that's the track ID. To actually get the track links, I had to pull the track ID. I had to pull that out. I went to a website that had a code that would embed it onto your website. You could take it and you could throw your track ID into the website and embed it. So I took that, I pasted the ID into it, and then I took the entire code and then I pasted it back into just like a blank website template thing, whatever, and then I followed the link after it embedded into the thing, and then I did the thing and I was on the website. Boom, bada bing, bada. Yep, these links were in the titles of the videos. And speaking of the titles, they had this really weird formatting. The titles, they're formatted with about 5 or 6 numbers at the beginning, a semicolon, and then the string of weird. It almost seems like a random string of capital letters, lowercase letters, and numbers, and then another semicolon and the date. And I just think this is really bizarre. It's like, what could this mean, right? It's just about as weird as the thumbnail. And I realize I was a little bit out of my depth with this sort of thing. If it's something to do with like if it's encoded in like base 64 or something, I don't know anything about that. I decided to message somebody because they made this video that was vaguely similar to it. It was a video titled YouTube as a hard drive, where you can use the video to actually store data. The video here is vaguely similar to the other video about the podcast, mainly because the thumbnails just look so weird to me. They just remind me of one another. So I decided I would try to get in contact with this person and see if they knew anything about this video, and that's the main reason, is because the videos just reminded me of each other, of one another. I went ahead and sent him a message and figured I'd have to wait until he sent me a reply. You can encrypt it and then have like some text files encrypted inside of a YouTube video, which is just honestly kind of crazy. Something that I wouldn't even be able to begin to understand. Maybe they would, though. Maybe they would understand this video. I feel like I don't do a good enough job at explaining things, so now is a good time, good as any, to do a recap and further solidify anything that wasn't already apparent, anything that wasn't already concrete. So this all started in about mid-2022, somewhere around that, and these channels, they just started uploading these podcasts with thumbnails that were just a bunch of random pixels, essentially. But each thumbnail is different. And each podcast ranges from 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour. What's interesting to note is that all the names are just so fucking generic. It's kind of funny. Miles Hook, Edna Thornborough, I don't know. But what I do know is that they all got terminated at some point. I'm not sure when exactly, but I imagine it was just all of them at once got wiped. That's how I like to imagine it, at least. I don't know though. So I found your video about using YouTube as a hard drive, and it reminded me of a different YouTube channel that re-uploaded different podcasts from SoundClouds and other websites as videos with these clown vomit thumbnails. Image below. I'm a little out of my depth here, and I have a few questions if you don't mind answering them. Your video was uploaded in black and white, but would it be possible to use colors to store data as well? 2. It will seem ridiculous, but if you had to guess, do you think the image is embedded with a title? 3. Are the titles of these videos notable in any way? 4. Would re-uploading these podcasts to YouTube make it a better input to train a model? I think it would, since YouTube compresses all videos to be the same, but I have no idea. 1. It would be possible to use some color other than black and white, though you'd probably not get much improvement since you'd likely need to increase the size of pixels to accommodate for less compression resistance. 2. I don't understand what you're asking. I don't know what the titles are. Maybe it's in base 64, I don't know. 3. YouTube compression isn't special as far as I know. It would make it easier to store, I suppose. Backup or something. I couldn't find the videos on YouTube, so a link could help. Yeah, I ran the titles through an all-in-one multi-decipher, but I got nothing. Specifically, I remember trying base 64 and hex, but still nothing. Also checked a random character string generator that made a string up of letters, numbers, and capitals, but no dice. The titles in the string aren't similar enough, and the titles are formulaic to some extent. All the bot channels uploading these got terminated. The videos were just a still image of the image in the thumbnails. Each image is always different, with a podcast playing in the fucking balls in the background. I have an archive.org link with the thumbnails still intact. I don't really think it'll be of much help though. And then this follows up to, so now it's conspiracy theory time, right? We have all the information. I went over it a little bit more. We have a little bit of context clues from a guy who knows about this sort of stuff, right? So, educated guesses. My first conspiracy theory on this whole matter was that this was somehow related to an AI in some way. AI podcast. This is why the type of questions I use are important, because I need to know if a model can be trained with these, if an AI model, perhaps AI podcast. I figured someone was uploading the videos to YouTube to train an AI podcast, and the reformatting of the podcast into videos and the compression techniques used by YouTube would make it easier for a model to train, because I read a book about this where there's a lot of nuance in training an AI, and I don't know, that's just the first thing my mind went to, was like there's a bunch of nuance with AI, so I figured it was something with that, but I don't know, maybe not. I do like to entertain the idea of AI, of this being some weird AI, underground AI podcast thing. Let's have a mental breakdown. Let's break it down into digestible parts and try to figure it out, right? So I created a diagram, and I broke it down into 3 main parts, right? This entails scrapers. Now you can find podcast scrapers, and what a scraper does is it combs over a website and it pulls out all the information you want. Like if you wanted YouTube video scrapers that scraped for cat videos, right? You can essentially get this this digital comb of sorts, and it just combs through the website and it pulls out all those videos, it pulls out all their titles, pulls out all the metadata, it can pull out the descriptions, whatever you want, whatever parameters you want to set for it, right? So that's a scraper. And the scraper we're talking about in question for this example is a podcast scraper, or at least that's what I believe it to be, right? Next up, bot YouTube accounts. We've seen this plenty of times. Bot YouTube accounts, they usually just leave comments. My content is better than yours, or this guy just uploaded on my channel. But I'm sure if you've been on YouTube for a decent amount of time, you've probably seen bots. They're so weird too. They're so weird and rudimentary. But botted YouTube accounts are very weird. And there's so many different levels to them and so many different metas. There's bots that copy accounts and they'll copy the replies in a comment section, essentially farm engagement to their account so they can end up selling it. There's bots that I've seen in like coding videos that will just say the most random shit I've ever seen or heard. There's bots that... There's just so many different kinds of bots when it comes to YouTube account bots. And the next thing, the final thing, is botted uploads. And we can assume that this is how they're uploading it. They're botting it. They're botting their uploads because there's no way they're uploading 1,000 videos from manually, you know? There's gotta be some kind of automation. Automated uploads would be a more appropriate terminology. Automated uploads. And it's more than likely we can just pair these two together. Scraping, I'm not really sure how that plays into it, but it's probably, if my assumption is correct, this is probably just a plugin. Like they were just testing out if a plugin would work for like Kodi, and they started pulling podcasts and like scraping them from websites and uploading them as YouTube accounts, or uploading them as YouTube videos so they could access them from Kodi more conveniently. I don't know. That's the only thing I can come up with. It doesn't have to be Kodi, it could be anything, but that's the first example that comes to mind. It's probably based in America because a lot of them were in English. So that's my more educated guess, is that this is someone's attempt to make an automated system that pulls together a bunch of different podcasts from a bunch of different websites all together in one place on YouTube. And there's some kind of software that they use to interface with it because these titles and thumbnails are just bizarre, right? And the reason they're doing this is for conveniency, so they don't have to go to all these different websites. That's my hypothesis. That's my idea. That's what I'm thinking, at least. It's hard to find anything when searching for this. I tried reverse searching the thumbnails, tried reverse searching the titles. I couldn't find anything. So they probably shut this down. It was probably just something they were testing, or maybe they're uploading somewhere else. I looked on Vimeo. I couldn't find anything on Vimeo. It's really hard to search for these. The titles aren't titles. They're just numbers. So, I mean, I'm kind of out of leads. I think it's interesting, but I don't know where to go from here. That's about it. Hello guys, it's Chuck E. Cheese YouTube. Whoa, holy crap.